Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Goldberg, and I'll be the hearing officer for tonight's hearing. I work at Public Works, assigned to project management, and my job as the hearing officer is to record to the best of my ability both sides of the story, both sides of the issue, and then present it to the acting director. It's up to the acting director to decide how to proceed. She is free to accept, reject, modify any recommendation I might make. I try and take notes and put out the important things that I heard that I think that are important for the director to make a decision. So it's not meant to be a stenographer's record of what was said. This is being recorded. It will be available on YouTube. So if someone would like to see the exact language that was used, that would be the place to do it. The way the hearing will go is we'll ask the department to present first. We'll then ask the appellant to speak, or the appellant's representative. If you're a representative, please say your position. If you're the architect or owner's rep or whatever that might be. I also ask that you state your name and spell it for me, because I don't like to write people's names down incorrectly when I present that to the director. So with that, we'll start with public comment. Public comments for anything that is not on today's agenda that you would like to speak to. So is there anyone that would like to make a public comment? So seeing none, hearing none, we'll close public comment and move on to the first item on the agenda.
Excuse me, Mr. Goldberg, there is a
Yep.
hand by Mr. Nolte.
Okay, very good. Mr. Nolte, public comment? This is for items not on the agenda, Mr. Nolte.
Yes. When initially this agenda was posted in March, I think it was, there weren't as many hearing items. And so it makes it sometimes hard for the public to follow how many items will actually be on the agenda until they are able to download the current agenda as posted on the internet. So, yeah, and I just wanted to make that point, that sometimes it gets confusing to the public when they see one agenda item at the beginning and then they see an additional one posted that has changes to the number of hearing orders that are going to be heard, because they prepare for certain ones, and then they see there's a lot more to prepare for. Just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Nolte. I'm not entirely clear on how it's made. I believe items are added to the agenda, and then by a final date, according to the code, the agenda is finalized. So, Cerise, did you want to speak to that at all? Maybe not. Okay. Mr. Nolte,
no.
if you send Cerise a note, or Urban Forestry, they can explain how the agenda is adopted, just for clarification, so that you know and anyone else of interest is aware. So with that, any other public comment? Okay, then we'll move on to item number 3, hearing order 206.
There was
36.
another hand, Mr.
Oh.
Goldberg. I'm sorry. There's a little delay, I guess.
That's okay. Who else wanted to speak on public comment?
Just a moment. I'm going to.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I live at 10,005 Market Street.
So we're not going to talk right now on anything that's on the agenda. So this is general public comment for items not on the agenda.
Okay, sorry, I didn't understand.
That's okay.
Is this meeting for the removal of trees?
Yes, this is the tree hearing, and the 1,000 block of Market Street is on the agenda. It's the last item on the hearing.
So if I want to make a public comment to not cut trees, do I wait?
Well, if you want to speak specifically to that item, yes, you wait for that item to be called.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else for public comment? Okay, so we'll try again. Number 3 on the agenda, hearing order 206-365 to consider the removal of 2 street trees with replacement adjacent to 2285 Gerald Street. 1 tree is on Gerald, 1 is on Barnfeld Avenue or frontage. Staff has approved the removal and the public has protested. For the department,
good evening. My name is Brian Ong with San Francisco Urban Forestry. I'm an urban forestry inspector, and I will be the representative for Bureau of Urban Forestry. So this is the tree removal hearing for on April 25th, 2022. Am I sharing? Teresa, can you see the screen?
No, you're not sharing.
Oh,
You'll need to
okay.
do it again. Oh, okay. There you go.
Okay. So this is order number 206-365 for 2285 Gerald Avenue. This is to consider the removal of 2 street trees with replacement adjacent to 2285 Gerald Street. The staff has approved the removal and the public has protested. This is construction related. You can see this is just a site plan of where all the trees are located. The first tree is on the north end. You can see it's going to be existing tree to be removed. And then also down at the bottom, there's the second tree. Existing tree is to be removed. Both trees are to be relocated or replaced in another area along the frontage. There's also one other young tree. It's a young fuff tree, Friends of the Urban Forest, that was not established. It's less than 3 years. So we didn't include it on any of the postings because we don't require a tree less than 3 years that hasn't been established to be posted. So we're going to allow them to remove it and then, replace that tree. They're going to relocate it over to that other circled area. So here's that tree. It's the young fuff tree that's not established. It's less than 3 years old. So we typically do not require like any construction or even homeowners to apply to remove the tree because it's so young and they can just replace the tree. And then below you see the site plan. The tree is on the left-hand side, and then or the tree's on the right-hand side where there's going to be a new driveway put in, and the tree will be relocated to the left of that. This is the other tree where they'll be trenching for transformer. The transformer is going right where that back wheel is. The tree is in good condition, but because there's a transformer going in the building and then they're trenching to the street, they're going to be trenching right through the base of the tree. So Gerald Avenue tree has utility trenching conflicts, and the tree is in fair condition. There's a slight lean and codominant stems at the main branch union. And then this is kind of a close-up of where the tree is being located, right to the left of it. And the trenching for the electrical transformer conflicts with the current tree location. The transformer will be inside the building, and then the trenching will go straight out into the street. This is the second tree. The tree is in fair condition. The tree was previously burned in the fire. As you can see in the photo below, there's some dieback, and that's where the tree kind of burned from a fire. Some dieback in the canopy, and Here, there is another driveway curb cut. The tree will be removed. It won't be replaced in the same spot, but we will, construction will find a new spot to plant. So the project tree totals, there's 3 removals, those 3 trees, and they're planting 9 trees. So to be consistent with how we deal with similar cases, we have approved the removal, and the public has protested.
Okay, just one question on this. So when you say removing 3, the hearing has
Yeah.
removing 2, is that
Yeah.
the,
So yeah, they're removing 2 trees. The third tree is basically the small fluff tree.
okay, the one that's
Um,
not required to be,
They're not required for a permit to have
Okay.
removed, but we just wanted to show it on the presentation, just so no one's concerned that, oh, there's a tree missing. But in the permit application, they only applied for 2, and we only required them to apply for those 2 trees.
okay. I
Yeah.
just want to be clear so that
Yeah,
so that people listening in are
Yeah.
aware of that, and actually for me too.
yeah.
So thank you. Is the appellant here? Would the appellant like to speak? Okay, I don't see anyone.
We
Any
do
members?
have a phone caller. If you are calling in and you want to speak, press *9 to raise your hand. Otherwise, if you are the appellant and want to speak on this item, please raise your hand.
I see a hand up. Josh is raising his hand.
I don't believe that that's the appellant. Let's see. Hello, are you?
I'm not the appellant, but if the
Okay.
approval was, if the applicant was approved, then there wouldn't be an appellant.
The homeowner or the person that lives in that address.
Right.
The public. Is it, all
Are you
right.
ready for the public now?
Yeah, I am ready for the public. Mr. Clip has his hand up.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can, sir. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, just a few points. I didn't hear, first of all, whether the vault placement schedule had been followed and examined in terms of approving this removal and looking at the plans, and if that's what we're talking about, trenching for those utilities, that is something that is a public works placement schedule. I also didn't hear whether the new requirements for construction under the revised Public Works Code Article 16 had been followed. Those are the law now, and it would be good if the department would include that in its presentation. And then finally, there is nothing under Public Works Code Article 16 that allows for the removal, even if the tree is being moved somewhere else, just because it hasn't established. The only way that you can do anything with a street tree with the tree is following Article 16, and this is just a street tree, and that you can't take out or do anything with a street tree without following all the procedures of Article 16. And a street tree, the definition of street tree under Article 16 says nothing about whether that tree is established. It simply says, quote, "Street tree shall mean any tree growing within the public right of way." So there should not be any exceptions, or, I think we can't be allowing things to be done with street trees that do not include the requirements of Article 16 just because that tree has not established. That's not the law. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak to this item? I see Mr. Carnes has his hand up.
Okay, you hear me okay?
Yes, I can, sir. Go ahead.
Yes. Right off the bat, on the announcement of this particular set of trees, You use the term Gerald Street, and then you change it to Gerald Avenue. I wonder if you could be much more accurate when listing trees in the future. And also, I agree with Josh that less than 3-year-old trees have the stature of trees. And often I've seen small trees just ripped out of the ground without any notice or posting. So I think we should put them back in the same realm as established trees. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Carnes. Mr. Nolte, I see your hand is up.
Hi, this is Michael Nolte. Want to make the difference. I don't know if my brother's on here. Yes, I would like to make a couple points about the presentation. When you see the circles that look like trees in the presentation, they have the gray ones and the green ones. The green ones, obviously, I would believe are the 9 that are going to be the replacement. So, that wasn't very clear in the presentation. And then when you had the figure of 3 and then adding 9, that again is very confusing. You should say that there are 3 replacements, and with an additional 6 more being added, or something to that figure. I mean, the way it was presented was it just doesn't add up in a way that makes sense to the public. You're basically replacing the 3 that are being removed with 3 being added in their place. And as far as trees being removed, even if the tree is young, there should still be a procedure in removing it, and also because somebody had to pay to have it planted and all that. I assume this is a development that's going in. That wasn't really talked about. The development or the developer should be paying for the replacement of even the young tree, not just considering it as a side note. It sounded to me in the presentation was more like a side note instead of I would assume that the developer's paying for the adding in all the additional 9 trees, and not just the 3 or the 2 that are being removed. So I'd like to have some clarification on that. Is the developer the permit that's being discussed for removal? Is it only the 2 and then they're being fined for those 2, or is it going to be all 3? I'd like a clarification on that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. Mr. John Nolte, you have your hand up?
Good. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Great. Good evening. First off, this is a changing of use of the property. They're doing a storage here. They got a permit, so therefore, with any there's supposed to be spacing of trees 20 feet apart anyway, and since this is like a corner lot, these trees should be there in the first place. So, and all I'm hearing is per the agenda and per what I briefly saw is that you're taking out trees for trenching, but again, that is not you have established trees there, and anyway, again, the presentation is not clear to the public. Secondly, I do agree because I was looking at trying to find out where this location was. Is it a street or an avenue? Apparently it's wrong on the agenda. And also the agenda was changed when it was first put up 3 months ago. So I have a concern about all the items on the agenda, because each one on the agenda has a hearing order notice, and those numbers have changed. And so now I understand why DPW has such a problem, because they give the number on the agenda to multiple things on the agenda. So that's how if somebody writes down the order number, it's for multiple items over the last 3 months, actually months, since it was 2 months since it was posted. So I have having some concerns about the legality of this meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak on this? I don't see any. Okay. If there's no one else, we'll close this item and move on to the next item. The next item is hearing number 206-366 to consider the removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 44 Surrey Street. Staff has approved the removal and the public has protested. Mr. Ong?
Hello, Brian Ong with San Francisco Urban Forestry. So this is for 44 Surrey Street. So basically this is for a driveway construction related. The property owner is proposing a 2-car garage and driveway. A new replacement tree will be planted at the eastern property line. So I have in front of you 2 site plans. The one on the left-hand side is the existing sidewalk plan. You'll see I circled where the tree is, the existing tree that's going to be removed. And then to the right-hand side is the proposed sidewalk plan. The tree will be moved all the way to the eastern side of the property line. At the end, the water meter will be replaced, will be placed over on the left-hand side of the new proposed driveway, and the tree can be planted, and there's enough room to plant that tree. Here is a photo of the existing evergreen pear tree. It has good health. It's a typical structure for species. But because the tree could be, replaced, we had decided to approve the removal for the garage. Here's another angle of the tree. Here's another shot of the canopy, below the canopy, and then on the right-hand side is where the tree is going to go. The water meter will be moved, and the tree can be planted and replaced in that spot. So to be consistent with how we deal with similar cases, we have approved the removal of the tree.
So can you speak briefly to what size tree will be used to replace it? What are we gonna?
Yeah, so the tree will be a 24-inch box tree. So all construction related items for buff are to be 24-inch box trees. And then, the species, I am not sure exactly what the species, but we do work with the property owner and the construction, the landscapers on the species, the correct species.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to speak to this item? Is the applicant present today? Do we know?
Yep, I am here. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Is this Mr. King?
Yes, it is, sir.
All right, Mr. King.
Okay, well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So my name's John King. I'm the homeowner at 44 Surrey Street. So I have lived here continuously for 38 years. So this project is the same project that was approved in 2019, but at that time it wasn't built. We did have a tree hearing back then, and the project was approved, and the tree was approved for tree removal without a replacement. So this current project is almost the same, except this project does include a tree replacement. The project's going to take 2 cars off the street that we have. One's electric and one is a plug-in hybrid. So the current project has gone through several submittals to planning to get approval. This street used to have overheads back in 2010-11, overhead utilities. Since then, it's been undergrounded. And unfortunately for us, the utility vaults, 2 utility vaults that service the surrounding neighbors, sort of telecom is one and PG&E is others, ended up being placed in front of our house, which is fine, but it just made the design a little tricky, which is why we went through several submittals to planning. It has actually gone out for public notification a few times. And as far as I know, there was never any comments or concerns received from the public. The tree itself was planted in the early 70s, so it's a little bit more than 50 years old. We're friends with the people who planted it. They've moved away now. And they didn't get city permission. They just, dug some holes and planted them. This tree is on the BUF tree list under section 2, which is called may not be appropriate for planting broadly throughout San Francisco. And then for the specific species, it says plant only in the warmest areas of the cities. So it's actually never done particularly well with our sort of half fog, half sun Glen Park climate. It actually looks probably the best it's looked now. It only looked this good one other time, which was in the early 2000s. And that's when it broke through our neighbor's sewer line, which you can see her house is kind of a, salmony yellow there. And I suspect it's broken through one of our lines because we both have some minor problems right now. So Surrey Street itself is a very narrow street. It was undergrounded for utilities about 10 years ago. It's about 23, 24 feet wide. There's cars on both sides. It's goes both ways are the way traffic travels, but it's only a 10 or 11 or 12-foot lane in the middle, so cars can't pass each other. This is the first tree after about 70 feet of no trees. So what happens is
30
trucks,
seconds.
moving trucks, garbage, whatever, they all tend to sort of back up here, and we've probably lost 20 to 25 branches when it's been hit over the years. Lately, there's sort of some ominous creaking, and a few weeks ago, we lost a limb due to the wind, and that's the first time in 38 years. So we are doing a replacement tree, and we're trying to plant a tree that will go higher, but will be narrower. I also like to point out that across the street and down the road, there's about 110 feet with no trees, because those are 3 through houses from Diamond, and we'd be willing to partially fund planting some trees there, and I have some photos. It would be a great location. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. King. Members of the public would like to speak? Mr. Clip, you have your hand up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. So from a member of the public perspective, taking out a healthy tree, as well as what looks like additional permeable surface and additional greening in order to house automobiles, feels like a metaphor for everything that got us into the climate change mess that we're in today. Also, there was no discussion of alternatives that might have been considered from the public's perspective on the presentation from the department. It looks like our forestry said, well, the tree is healthy, but there's going to be a garage, so we approved the tree's removal. It's really hard to believe that this is the best our city can do in the defense and growth of our urban canopy. It seems more reasonable that if we're going to just go ahead and kill a healthy tree to put in a garage, the least we can do for a large healthy tree is a biomass replacement, and not just a 1-for-1. Take out a big tree and put in some tiny sapling, which may or may not make it to health. Because despite our good intentions, despite all the ways we got here, this is in fact an environmental loss, which is something we can't just continue to do. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Clip. Are there other speakers, other members of the public wish to speak? Mr. Carnes?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sort of looking at this, and it looks like the existing tree goes in the public right of way. And so they're gonna remove that, put a garage, it looks like under the front porch. And I'm not sure where you're gonna put a large tree or even medium-sized tree given all that use of land in front of the home. Will it just go back in the sidewalk, will it right to the right of the garage entry, or will it go right in the yard? And also, I'm curious why the inspector or Buff will not discuss the replacement species at this time. Seems like that's a issue that should be taken care of before we do all this work. So that's end of my comments. I'd like a response, please.
It's public comment, Mr. Carnes. It's not question and answers. So anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Mr. Nolte, Mr. John Nolte.
Good evening. I have a couple of statements here. Again, the property owner is putting in a garage. He stated, he's pulled permits several times to put in this garage, and the house was built in 1909, so it was built without a garage, because back then we didn't have that many. When you build a house back in that era, you didn't have to put a garage in. And so he's updating his property. And my concern is that you have this parcel property, but then you also have the property next door that also wants to put a garage in too. So my concern is, does he own both properties? And if so, why all of a sudden two properties next to each other, two houses, both want to put in garages, and have pulled permits for it at the same time, and somehow magically gets it on the agenda for today, because they've already started the work on the property over a year ago. And so therefore, this is like their last step to get the tree removed, but they've already started construction on the property. So I'm a little worry about what goes on here is that Buff comes at the end of the project, and then seeks to get a permit to remove a tree when it should have been at the beginning of the project, when they pulled the permits in 2019 as the property owner stated. So why are we always at the end of the project and not doing this at the beginning of the project? So that, as Josh made a point, we could have thought of alternatives for these two properties next to each other, both on the agenda. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Nolte. Are there other speakers on this item? I see Mr. John Nolte, you have or Michael Nolte, I'm sorry.
I just want to thank the property owner for contributing to the greenery and having a tree that's provided much benefits to San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Are there any other speakers on this item? Seeing none, we'll close this item and move on to the next hearing. Hearing order 206-367 to consider the removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 46 Surrey Street. Staff has approved the removal and the public has protested.
Brian Ong with San Francisco Urban Forestry for 46 Surrey Street. It's pretty much almost the same as the one before for 44 Surrey Street. So this is also construction related. The property owner is proposing a 2-car garage in the driveway. A new replacement tree will be planted at the eastern property line. So you could see here on the left-hand side is the proposed site plan, where the new tree will go on the right-hand side of the driveway. On the right-hand side is the existing site plan where the tree exists and will be removed. Just want to clarify that both 44 and 46 Surrey Street, they will be replanting both trees, replacing them towards the eastern side of the property. So here is the photo of the tree. It's a healthy tree, somewhat healthy, but the structure is very poor due to past branch failures and poor young tree pruning. So you can see there's some like twists and turns in the branches. Very poor structure, as you can see on the right-hand side. Here's another close-up of the tree as well. And then this is just the photo of the sidewalk where the tree will be going, kind of where that white paint is. So to be consistent with how we deal with similar cases, we have approved the removal of the tree.
Very good. Is the property owner present and wish to speak? The applicant? No? Okay. Members of the public wish to speak? Mr. Clip, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I didn't realize until John mentioned it that we were just gonna keep going down the block. So I can't beat back planning. And since there, as John pointed out, there is no consideration of trees in the planning process at the moment. Despite what I think the new Article 16 would suggest that there it is a priority that should be happening. So I'll just take a moment to whoever's listening, just remind everyone that San Francisco has the smallest urban canopy of any major city in the United States. That in 2015, we rolled out an urban forest plan that called for the addition of 50,000 new street trees by 2034, and we are utterly failing in that and have not even come close to hitting that, despite I think we're getting close to the midway point on that. I would also point out that this urban forest plan is a critical part of San Francisco's 2021 climate action plan. Even though trees are not the silver bullet to climate change, they are a critical component of it. And it's just really disheartening to be in a city where we have such a small canopy, where we have great plans that we fail to implement or fund, and that we, it just one at a time, trees come out for garages, for construction, for, sometimes it's not even because it's in the footprint of a construction. It just happens to be in the way of where they want to lay down construction materials or vaults. And yet we haven't even looked at what the vault placement schedule is before we approve a tree for removal. It's just really disheartening as somebody who cares a lot about this and who spends a lot of time on it and seeks partnership and innovative solutions, to see that this is the way that we handle our trees. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Clip. Are there other speakers on this item? Michael Nolte, I see your hand is up.
I just want to second what Josh Clip just said. It gets really frustrating for the public to come to tree hearings and just find that trees are, which are essential in our community, especially San Francisco, are just being one by one taken out for various reasons, and no real consideration has been made to try to save them or add more to the that would need, because San Francisco is growing and we need more trees, not less, and there's something's going to have to give. And I don't really hear it when I get demoralized when you hear one after another trees are just going and going and going. When are they? When pretty soon they'll just be all gone. Anyway, thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Nolte. Mr. John Nolte.
Good evening. I think we should take up the first property owner suggestion that he wants to put in multiple trees on the other side of the street, and also get together with this second property, because I'm not sure if he owns this property or he has a neighbor that owns the second property that we're talking about now on the same street, and add more trees to the to this street, and do the biomass that Josh brought up about the trees. So I think a 3 to 4 to 1 ratio here would work and make it a permanent permit, because then the other issue here is sometimes when somebody is fixing up the property, he may own the property now, but 3 years from now, those trees, you want to make sure that the trees part of the, I know it's supposed to be part of the permit, but they may be selling these houses after they get done. So the point is, I've seen how you've passed a tree to be put in or whatever, but then it dies because it changes hands of the property owner sells it after he fixes it up. So I would wish that this is put in a lien against the property, basically, both of them, to maintain those trees. They put in one for sure, and multiple ones as suggested by Mr. King. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Nolte. Are there other speakers on this item? Seeing none, we'll close this item, move on to the next one. The next item is hearing order 206-288. This order supersedes order number 206-287, which was generated internally but not issued publicly, to consider the removal of 21 street trees with replacements as noted below on the 900 to 1100 blocks of Market Street between 5th and 8th Streets. This is part of the Better Market Street Phase 1. 15 of the trees are in poor condition and do not conflict with the proposed work. 6 trees conflict with the new infrastructure alignments and utility replacement. And I'll just read these into the record. Removal of 1 street tree at 900 Market Street, Site 8 with replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 923 Market Street, Site 2 with replacement. Removal of 2 street trees at 929 Market Street, Site 1 and 4 with replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 951 Market Street, Site 13 with replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 979 Market Street, Site 2 with replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 988 Market Street, Site 7 without replacement. Removal of 2 street trees at 1000 Market Street, Site 2 and 6 with replacement. Removal of 2 street trees at 1005 Market Street, Site 1 and 2 without replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 1066 Market Street, Site 1 with replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 1083 Market Street, Site 1 with replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 1119 Market Street, Site 1 with replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 1127 Market Street, Site 2 with replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 1133 Market Street, Site 1 without replacement. Removal of 3 street trees at 1155 Market Street, Site 2, 3, and 4. Tree 2 and 4 with replacement. Tree 3 without replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 1160 Market Street, Site 4 with replacement. Removal of 1 street tree at 1170 Market Street, Site 1 with replacement. Mr. Ong.
It's Brian Ong with San Francisco Urban Forestry. So yeah, most of these trees, as was said before, 15 are in poor condition. So Better Market Street is going through and doing their project from 5th Street to 8th Street. And so these 15 trees are in poor condition. So we're having Better Market Street project remove the 15 poor trees. And then there's another 6 trees that range from poor to fair to good that are in conflict with the new infrastructure alignments and utility placements. All these trees are platanus sycamore trees. So I'll begin this one. So this is the removal of the 1 tree at 900 Market Street, site 8 with replacement. As a close-up photo, the tree is in poor condition. You can see most of the leaves are gone, a lot of dieback, some dead leaves, and then you see the trunk of the tree, and there's a large wound. So this tree has been approved to be removed with replacement in the same spot. And then this is another removal of one street tree at 923 Market Street, site 2. Again, the tree is dying or dead and is in poor condition and will be replaced in the same spot. This is for 929 Market Street, the removal of 2 street trees. Both trees are in poor condition. They will be replaced in the same spot. You can see that they are dead or dying. This is 951 Market Street. Oh, sorry. This is 951 Market Street, site 13. The tree is in poor condition. You can see there's a small crack at the bottom, and the tree, there's barely any leaves on the canopy, and the tree is dead or dying. It can be replaced. This is the removal of one tree at 979 Market Street. Again, the tree is in poor condition. The tree is dead or dying, and it can be replaced in the same spot. This is the removal of one street tree at 988 Market Street, site 7. The tree is in good condition, but there is a proposed curb ramp at the corner, which poses an alignment issue with the existing tree. This tree cannot be replaced. So usually when a tree can't be replaced, we will issue the appraised value or the in lieu fee, and whichever is higher. And then this is the removal of 2 street trees at 1000 Market Street. Both these trees are in poor condition, site 2 and site 6. Trees basically dying. There's cracks in the upper stems, and both trees can be replaced. This is the removal of 2 street trees at 1005 Market Street, site 1 and 2. This is site 1. The tree is in good condition, but there's a proposed curb ramp at the corner, which poses an alignment issue with the existing tree. Then there's no replacement, and here's the appraised value of $6,500. And there's a new traffic signal pole going. This is site 2. This tree is in fair condition. This is the proposed curb ramp at the corner, which poses an alignment issue with the existing tree. There's no replacement. This is where the traffic signal pole will be going, and there is a large trunk wound at the bottom of the tree. And basically, so because there's no replacement, we will issue either the in lieu fee or the appraised value. This is the removal of one street tree at 1066 Market Street, site 1. The tree is in poor condition. You can see it's dead or dying, and it can be replaced in the same spot. This is at removal of one street tree at 1083 Market Street, site 1. Again, you can see the tree is in poor condition. It is leaning severely, and there's a wound at the bottom of the trunk. And then here's the removal of one street tree at 1119 Market Street, site 1. Again, the tree is in poor condition, dead or dying, and can be replaced in the same spot. Just further down the street is the removal of one street tree at 1127 Market Street, site 2. The tree is in poor condition, dead or dying. It's girdling. It's girdling the grate around at the bottom, and can be replaced in the same spot. This is for 1130. Is this 1155 Market Street? Oh, sorry. This is the removal of one street tree at 1133 Market Street, Site 1. This is in poor condition. Proposed boarding island poses an alignment issue with the existing tree. No replacement. Again, with the no replacement, we will be issuing either the in lieu fee or the appraised value, whichever is higher. Here is 1155 Market Street. 3 trees to be removed. Site 2, 3, and 4. Tree 2 and 4 will be replaced, and tree 3 without replacement. This is in front of the lighthouse for the blind. So site 2, the tree's in poor condition. This one can be replaced. And then this is site 3. This is the tree's in fair condition. There's a proposed curb ramp, poses an alignment issue with the existing tree, so no replacement. Again, we will assess the value of the appraised value or the in lieu fee, whichever is higher. Again, this is in front of the lighthouse for the blind. And then this is the site 4. The tree's in fair condition. This also poses alignment issue, but we will be replacing this tree. And this is at 1160 Market Street, Site 4. Again, the tree is in poor condition. You can see there's barely any canopy. The tree is dying and can be replaced in the same spot. And the last tree is at 1170 Market Street, Site 1. Again, the tree is in poor condition. It is dead or dying and can be replaced. So to be consistent with how we deal with similar cases, we have approved the 21 trees, 15 poor trees, and 6 trees that are in alignment issue with the project. And then Better Market Street team is here, and they will be able to discuss further the project and all the details within the project.
Right. Ms. O'Leo, were you going to speak for the project and give some more context or detail?
Yes, she is. I'm going to promote her to panelist.
Great.
Can you hear me, Miss Aaliyah? I'm not certain which device you wanted to.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can. Is this the
Okay.
one that I need to promote?
Yes,
Okay.
I disconnected from the other one.
Okay, just a moment.
Sorry about the confusion.
That's okay.
And then I'd like to share my screen.
So we need to make you, I think, a panelist.
Yes.
To share the screen. And so while Cerise is doing that, do you want to speak to your position and how you
Yes.
represent the? Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Olea. I'm with San Francisco Public Works, and I'm the project manager on Better Market Street. Let me share my screen. I have a few slides, and then I will hand off to Nick Ansel, who is the landscape architect on the project. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to take a step back and give you the background to the project and the details behind what Brian presented. Better Market Street is a project to fully reconstruct Market Street from Stewart to Octavia. It's a total of 2.2 miles. However, today we're only discussing the first phase of construction, which is Market Street between 5th and 8th Streets. We are focused on this part of Market because it's mid-market and needs a lot of attention to improve safety and accessibility. Market Street is on the city's high injury network as part of our Vision Zero policy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries by 2024. And some of the highest injury intersections are on Market Street. So, as I mentioned, a goal of the project is to improve safety and accessibility along the corridor. In 2019, we had a design that included a sidewalk level bikeway, which would have required the removal of all trees along Market Street because they conflicted with the bikeway. The only way to fit a bikeway in or even a bike lane east of 8th Street is to narrow the sidewalks. The sidewalks are much wider east of 8th Street and don't allow enough room for 2 lanes in each direction and a bike lane. So we would have had to have narrowed the sidewalk by 10 feet. That would have conflicted with the trees and would have required that we remove all of the trees along the corridor. In 2020, for various reasons, the sidewalk level bikeway was eliminated from phase 1, which significantly reduces the number of trees to be removed. The current plan is that bicycles will remain in the curb lane, which will be shared, but we're implementing other traffic calming measures to help improve safety. So again, tonight we're focusing on Market Street between 5th and 8th Streets. This is our first phase of construction. The majority of trees, I believe 16 of the 21 are being removed because of poor health to help create a better urban forest for Market Street.
30 seconds.
And we will be planting new trees. This is a quick overview of the project. The project includes traffic signal upgrades, new curb ramps, which will be wider. They'll be 8 feet wide to accommodate more pedestrians and improve accessibility. We'll be repaving the curb lane and the intersections, including all of the crossings. And then we'll be replacing the trees that are in poor health or dead. We'll be adding new trees, bike racks, and benches. And this is from 8th to 7th, and this is from 7th to 5th Streets. So with that concludes my presentation. I'd like to hand off to Nick Ansel, our project landscape architect.
Great.
Hello.
Go ahead,
Good
sir.
evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening. Hi, my name's Nick Ansel. I'm a landscape architect with Public Works. I just want to say a few things about the trees that we're planting. Currently on Market Street, as was pointed out by Mr. Ong, they're all currently one species of platanus sycamore trees. The trees that we're going to be infilling, we're going to have new platanus. They're an improved variety that will do better in San Francisco. We're also going to introduce Ulmus parvifolia, which is an evergreen elm, and Lophosamon conferta, which is an evergreen tree that also does well in San Francisco. These trees were selected by a tree working group that worked together for many months, both community members and folks from the city, to determine a palette of trees that would work along Market Street. So I just want to point out that these trees will be new trees on Market Street, new types of trees. And some of these have, the ulmus and the platanus have actually just recently been planted on the Trinity, in front of the Trinity development across from the Orpheum Theater on Market Street. So that's all I'm going to say tonight. Thank you so much.
Great. Can I just, for the public, can I ask what size trees are we planning to plant?
Oh, yes,
And,
these will
is
be,
what, I'm sorry, and then the second issue would be a maintenance plan for them to be established?
you bet, you bet. These will go in as 36-inch box trees. We realize this is a very difficult area on Market Street. It has a lot of social problems, and trees can take a beating. So we're putting in extra large trees, 36-inch box trees, in order to give them a better chance to get established. And related to establishment is the maintenance. And we, within the contract of this phase of work in Better Market Street, we're going to have a 3-year maintenance contract. So once the trees are planted and the project is complete, they will be maintained by an outside contractor for 3 years in order to get the plants fully established. And so that would include watering and pruning and just taking care of the tree in general. And that's going to be for 3 years. At that point, then maintenance would come back to the Bureau of Urban Forestry.
Okay, very good. Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there's no other speakers from well, we'll go to the public. I see do not remove trees, had their hand up first, so we'll go there.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. As Ansel just mentioned, the trees on Market Street can take a beating. I'd like to show a screenshot that I just now took of the trees outside the 4th floor window on 1005 Market Street.
Okay, could you hold just one moment and I'm
Sure.
going to promote you to panelist.
And I just want to point out that
Hold on just one moment. You can speak again after it transfers you over, okay? Just a moment.
Thank you.
Can you state your name as well, please?
Sky Slade.
Thank you.
Ma'am, did you want your name included in the record or?
Can you hear me now?
I can. Let me ask a question. Did you want your name included in the report, the recommendations to the director, or list you as do not remove trees?
The latter is fine.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so I've lived here for 20 years, and every single year, the trees in front of 1000 Market Street, there's a tree number 1 and tree number 2 on your guide there. They bloom every single year. And as Nick pointed out, the trees on Market Street can take a beating. So just like a human, if you get an injury or you cut your leg or something, it doesn't mean you die. So both trees are alive and blooming. And I do have I'll share a screenshot that I took literally while we were on this call. So this is a shot I took out the window. You can see it's a green tree. Like I said, these are blooming every year for 20 years. There's also the trees in front of 1000 Market Street, which is part of the view from this northern facing side of 1005 Market. It is true that one of the, I believe, 3 trees in front of 1005, one of those trees is pretty small and it does need to be cut down. It's dead. But the other 2 trees are fine, and that's part of the foliage. I wanted to also, I think, I don't know if I'm sharing my whole screen. I'm going to stop share and then I'm going to share my browser. And in the Better Market Street promotional material, I would call it, it's sort of the future plan images that were mocked up. They show a view of the trees in front of my building and also in front of the rest of the block. If you can see this, this is from the Better Market Street transformation project proposed, and you see what's so nice about this image here, and you can see the lifestyle improvements. Well, the trees, if they were removed, you probably wouldn't feel the same positivity about this image. This image shows all these trees on the 1000 from 6th Street to 7th Street, which is where my cursor is. Those trees are slated to be cut down, and they're not slated for replacement. So
30 seconds.
okay, so I'm wondering why they're included in this image if they're actually going to be cut down. I mean, maybe in another 20 years, those trees might be, you know, grown tall, but the view that I did show you from my window is the 4th floor view. And we urge you to leave those trees. There are already ramps on this corner. There are 2 ramps on this 1005 Market Street corner. So we even have ADA accessibility in our building, and a wheelchair person who is able to use the existing ramps. We don't need to cut down trees to make new ramps in new spots. So it's just not right to put in a small tree and expect the person 20 years from now to be able to enjoy another tall tree. So thank you for your time.
No, thank you very much. Josh, Mr. Clip, I believe you're next up.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Clip.
Thanks. I'd like to thank the previous caller for pointing out that the city often shows big, mature, established trees in its promotional materials, despite plans to actually remove them. I'd also like to note that approving a removal without replacement is no longer legal under the revised Article 16, and I would encourage the hearing officer and the department representative to go back and review that revised law. I'm glad Ms. Olea brought up that this was only the first phase, because the Better Market Street plan at its outset proposed to remove 767 trees along Market Street, or effectively every single tree along this corridor. Last year, the Sierra Club sent a letter to the city expressing its concern about this massive proposed removal. And in response, the city said, well, that's our plan, but now we're going to do it in phases. So in other words, they just said, we're going to be doing this in parts, which is a little like saying, we'll let you know how many we're going to remove as we figure it out along the way, which doesn't sound to me like a plan that is prioritizing our urban canopy. Also, it's hard to believe that our own city is not only not following its own public works code, but that under the moniker of Better Market Streets, we're removing the very thing that makes streets better. There's plenty of research that shows that trees slow traffic, improve safety for bikes and pedestrians, increase public and community health, and make streets more attractive to walking, biking, and shopping. There's a book I'm sure you've heard of called Walkable City: How Downtown Can Save America One Step at a Time. This book contains what it calls the 10 steps of walkability, and step number 8 is, quote, plant trees. But here in San Francisco, where we have the smallest urban canopy, where we're failing our urban forest plan, we're removing trees faster than we replace them. We're not following the science that indicates we should not just replace them, but should be doubling, tripling, and even quadrupling the amount we plant against the ones we take out. And saying that we should take out trees because they're failing almost sounds like we're blaming the trees for being unhealthy, or like they girdled themselves, when in fact the city is responsible as the steward to be the stewards of those trees. They are street trees. We put them there. It's our responsibility to take care of them. And if they fail, that's on us. So it feels pretty lousy that rather than come here and acknowledging our failure to take care of these trees, we call them sick. Rather than say, oh, hey, there's a tree here, maybe we can work around it. We make plans and designs as if the trees don't even exist. And rather than acknowledge the critical role that trees play in climate resilience and community supporting streetscapes, and do everything that we can to plant and preserve them, we come to this hearing in 2022 actually proposing to plant fewer trees than we remove. There's nothing acceptable about this proposal, and our city ought to be embarrassed by it. I'd also like to note that it's well established that this corridor and these trees specifically support the Western swallowtail butterfly population, which it sounds like we'll be destroying systematically in phases. This was an issue that was raised in the recent BART tree removal that is along the same corridor. And I will point out that BART seems to have been more concerned about that and responsive to this issue than our own city planners. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Clip.
Mr. Goldberg, we do have 8 Jensen, who wrote in the chat that they'd like to speak.
Okay, well, I see Mr. Castaneda has their hand up, so we'll go with Mr. Castaneda, then we'll go to A. Jensen.
Hello. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello?
Yes, we can. Go
Oh,
ahead.
perfect.
Uh-huh.
So I was, hopefully I can share my screen with you.
If you'd like to share your screen, hold on just one moment and I will promote you to panelist, okay?
Perfect, thank you. Awesome. All right. So I just wanted to go ahead and share this visual of our street here. This is 6th and Market. As you can see, the crosswalks look identical to what is being proposed. I don't really see an improvement. The sidewalks, like the other tenant who lives here in the building as well mentioned that the wheelchair accessibility functions for one of our tenants here. They use it all the time, and there really is no need to change it or widen it. I do see, however, a need for the roads to be repaved. I think that's the biggest issue. And the removal of the trees doesn't really make sense unless, like it's been stated before, they are dying or they are rotting. And I think it is our responsibility, like the last person who said, we should be taking care of the trees, and the trees that are bent or crooked or dying, I think that's our fault. It's a lack of maintenance and care for the trees that we do have here. But removing them, I don't think is gonna solve anything. Thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Next up, we're gonna have Mr. Jensen. Is that A. Jensen? I shouldn't. Did A. Jensen wish to speak?
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alan Jensen. I'm a resident at 1005 Market Street. I am also a disabled wheelchair user. I have very kind of weak upper body strength, as well as I'm not able to stand very easily, so I use my wheelchair to get about. The two ramps outside of 1005 Market on both corners there, they're both accessible. Like, I'm not quite sure what's wrong with them, according to the team here. As far as widening them goes, I can get up and down them at the same time as another wheelchair user. And I'm a manual chair user, so I have to push my chair everywhere. So there's not an issue with steepness with it, as far as I can tell. As far as the trees go, they provide a lot of shade, and they make the area look much nicer than it would without the trees. And there's also some evidence, I have a background in sociology, that the trees actually reduce crime, which I think is especially important right now, as a lot of the quote unquote cleanup project from the Tenderloin is getting pushed down into our area. And there's like, I think it was the Vermont Transportation Resource Center a while back did a study that it reduced crime like about, I think it was like 12% in areas that had the trees. So I think it's maybe the wrong time to look at removing this. And if the city really wanted to make the area more accessible in there, they could add in a ramp going southbound on 6th Street right out in front of there, because I have to go blocks and blocks to go get on another bus. So I think the focus on the things that are not broken and taking out the trees in favor of that is a little short-sighted. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Are there other speakers on this item? Mr. Nolte, Michael Nolte?
Yeah, so this is Michael Nolte. I'm one of the co-founders of Market Street for the Masses. And I just would like to say that a lot of times when city personnel come and say that there were all these meetings and certain people came along and created a plan. And, the plan was probably at the time, and people are now thinking about the future, and a lot of things have changed to the present, and now we're dealing with the present, and as the present is now today, and now we're having to think from today to the future, and there's a lot of changes that have happened in San Francisco. We've lost 6% of the population in San Francisco during COVID, and a lot of other changes and reasons because of recession. And now we're dealing with how to improve our main street of San Francisco. And there seems to be a disconnect on understanding what San Francisco should be about. It should be about the beautification of San Francisco. And San Francisco is a tourist destination. And when you're, when we were dealing with Bart, it sounded like Bart understood what how to keep its communities looking good. This plan doesn't do that at all. It basically just says we've got a lot of improvements. We were supposed to do a bicycle lane. We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to do that. All that sounded like those are pots of money that they wanted to use to make improvements to Market Street. But it seems now we have to deal with the reality of now. And now I think that if we could redo this plan with the idea of what Bart was doing, we'd probably come up with a better way to preserve our butterflies, our trees. There should be maybe 3 or 4 rows across of trees, not just the 2. Trees we need to be planting many more trees. I saw a lot of tree basins that were empty in the pictures. It wasn't clear how many of those tree basins are going to be full of trees. And then in your presentation, I also saw big areas where no trees were at all, which it kind of mystified, why you were even allowing large parts of the sidewalk with no trees at all.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Mr. John Nolte, I see your hand is up.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Great. There's a couple of things I want to make some points here. This plan has been in the works for over 10 years, and it's been called under different things. This is just the current plan, and the issue of apparently DPW has or the people that work on the current plan has chopped up Market Street into 2 parts. You have the upper market and the lower market, and you're not seem to want to use the same type of trees on both sides, and you have to come up with a special tree species for the from Octavia to the Ferry Building, which is totally ridiculous. So you guys have the planners in the city have changed everything around. No continuity in the plan for the whole Market Street. We still have not, mid-market still has not recovered from when in the 1950s Bart was put in and destroyed Market Street because of the businesses and the theaters that were there. And now you're going to do it all again, and you're going to put it in phases. It's still going to be the same issue. You're going to be hurting the businesses. Businesses are now leaving Market Street because they know about you tearing up the street and how it's going to affect their businesses. So that they're leaving, and they're so you're doing it at the worst time for the businesses. The trees need to be. DPW's office was on Market Street right in front of these trees, and you didn't take care of your own trees. So, and then you come here and you're going to show us pictures about trees that you didn't take care of that you were walking by every day to go to work. So I'm appalled that you want to show us pictures of trees that are dying for whatever reason that you didn't take care of, and it was your responsibility in the first place. So I think you should think about why you're not getting your act together and you just want to spend money to destroy Market Street again. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Mr. Carnes, I see your hands up.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
So I want to point out that last year, between June 2021 and February 2022, Buff tried to come up with a list of 32 tree removals for the Bark Canopy project on Market Street. The list started off with 32 trees, and various trees were removed and added, and it went from 32 trees to 34 trees. By the time the final decision, it had 33 tree removals listed. So I really dislike inaccuracy. And this particular project has 21 trees listed for the project, phase 1. I thought it would be less prone to errors from Buff, and already I was wrong. I am wrong. John Nolte pointed out to me in emails that not all the trees were posted for removal, as is required by SF law. I reviewed some of the file photos and saw no evidence of paper postings notices. Chris Buck, the DPW urban forester, has a lot of trouble distinguishing tree locations and site numbers. For example, 929 Market Street has 4 trees, site 1, 2, 3, and 4. I obtained the SF tree information report for the tree at 929 Market Street, site 1. In a note from 2019, Mr. Buck wrote that 929-1 is an empty basin and was removed from the watering list. Actually, 929 site 2 is an empty basin, i.e. no tree present. So Mr. Buck removed a live tree from the watering list. It's very easy to determine where a tree is, since each of SF's 125,000 street trees has a latitude, longitude coordinates. You can use a cell phone and easily find where the tree is located. Unfortunately, Mr. Buck does not use latitude, longitude points, so he makes many errors for tree locations. Not a good idea when making a tree removal list. I've reviewed only a few street trees, but I'm sure it will be a long process getting an accurate tree removal list. So errors made so far: inadequate removal postings, inaccurate list of tree locations, and lack of care making the removal list. I also wanted to point out that both speakers introducing the set of trees, on the second to last tree, removal of one street tree at 1160X Market Street.
30
Site
seconds.
4 is part of the address. So I really think there's a lot of sloppy work being done by Buff. I think that the citizens of San Francisco are owed an accurate list of trees that are being removed or replaced. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Carnes. Any other speakers on this item? Seeing none. Cerise, do you see any?
I don't see any hands at this time.
Okay. With that, we'll close the this item. Just as a comment, I have a couple of written appeals to some of the actions, so I'll include those comments in the recommendations to the director. So at this point, with nothing else, anything that's in is in today, and nothing will be accepted afterwards. I'll make my report to my recommendations to the acting director, and then, as I noted, it'll be up to her to decide how to proceed from there. I just want to thank everyone for their time tonight, for their interest in the trees and making the city better, and in giving us your point of view so we can communicate that to the acting director of Public Works. So with that, we'll end it for the evening. Thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Ong. Thank you, Ms. Olia. And thank you to all the speakers, and especially thank you to Cerise, the clerk for tonight, who does such a good job managing it. So with that, thank you.